Greetings and welcome to the short video presentation on how we go about creating a virtual install of Fedora Workstation using VirtualBox. Now to begin this process, we're just going to go up here, click on the new button, and that brings up the start of the Create a Virtual Machine wizard. On this first window of the installation wizard, we want to make sure that we give our virtual machine a user-friendly name and that we pull down from the type window, we pull down and we select Linux, and then underneath the version window we select Fedora 64-bit from the selections. Go ahead and say next. Now we can go ahead and leave this at 1024 megabytes of RAM, or we can increase it depending on how much RAM that you can spare from your host machine. Now remember, when you install or you give RAM to a virtual machine, it only uses the RAM when the virtual machine is up and running. When you power off the virtual machine, the RAM goes back to the host operating system. Now I like to go ahead and give this 2048 megabytes of RAM, or 2 gigs. So I've gone ahead and changed the RAM allocation for this virtual machine to 2048 megabytes, or to 2 gigs. I'm going to go ahead and say next. Now we're going to go ahead and create a virtual hard disk now. So we're going to go ahead and leave that as the default option. We're going to say create. And now we're going to select which type of a virtual disk we like to create. We're going to select the default, which is VDI. Select next. And now we're going to go ahead and leave the default for dynamically allocated physical disk. We're going to go ahead and say next. And we're going to go ahead and increase this from 8 gigs to 60 gigs to make sure we have enough room for any storage of new packages, updates, or installation of applications that we do later on. I'm going to go ahead and say create. Alright, so the virtual machine has been created, and now all we have to do is go ahead and start it, and we can begin the installation process. So this begins by going up here to this green start button and just clicking on it, and in just a moment we'll get a window to pop up asking us for the source CD. Now the source CD is the Fedora Workstation ISO image that you have downloaded earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that, and that goes back into the path, and now I can say start, and the installation process will begin. Now we can go ahead and just say S, or we can click in enter or S. I'm going to go ahead and just say enter, and the installation process will begin. I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen here. Now on this particular check that it wants to do for the media, I'm going to go ahead and just hit the escape button one time, and that closes that out, and we can continue on with the installation process. Now for us to get to the option to actually install to the hard disk, we must first go ahead and log on as the live system user. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. And in just a moment, it's going to pop up and it's going to give me an option to either use the live CD option or to install to a hard disk. So now we have that option. So you can try Fedora as a live CD, but you won't be able to save anything, or any changes that you make to the operating system will not be saved. So to do all that, we have to install to the hard disk. So I'm going to go ahead and start the installation by clicking on Install to a Hard Disk. So that brings up the Welcome to Fedora screen, and we have to select our language. I've selected English, United States. I'm going to go ahead and scroll on down so I can get to the Continue button. Now on this next screen here, I have to go ahead and select the installation destination. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. Make sure that the 60 gig partition that we created is selected, and now you can scroll back up. Now close out these little windows here, and we're just going to click on Done, and it pops back on over to the main screen, and the automatic partitioning process has been selected. Now we have to scroll down, and we can begin the installation process. Now during this installation process, it wants us to go ahead and set the root password, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to type in the root password. Now once I have my root password typed in, I'm going to go ahead and click on Done, and I'm going to click on it one more time. That brings me back to the installation screen. Now this is going to take a few minutes. Don't be impatient. go ahead and let it continue on, and it will install. Even if it seems like it's not installing, you must be patient and give it enough time, even if it tries to hang. So the installation process has completed. I'm going to go ahead and click on the quit button, and that brings us up here to the Fedora desktop, but I'm going to go ahead and restart real quick so that I make sure that everything did install correctly. So I'm going to go to my power button over here to the right. I'm going to go down to the next power button. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to select restart. So after we've rebooted, we come back up, and now it wants to build us a profile. So we're going to go ahead and just step through this real quick. I'm going to go ahead and say next, next, turn everything off, say next. Now I have to select my time zone. I am in the Philippines, so I'm going to go ahead and accept that as a default time zone. And then I don't need any of this third-party software, so I'm going to go ahead and say next to that. I don't need to create any online accounts. I'm going to go ahead and skip that. Now it wants to log me on and create this user profile. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a name and a username, and I'm going to type in Cyber Offense for both. So I can now log on as Cyber Offense, and I've also created a home folder for that same user. I'm going to go ahead and just say next to that. Now I have to set a password for Cyber Offense. I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. So I've typed in my password. Now I'm going to go ahead and say next to that. And now it says I'm ready to start using Fedora. And now it's going to log me off, and it's going to log me back on. Now, the one thing you got to remember about all of this is that once we get the installation completed with the ISO image, we must then tell it not to use the ISO image to start the operating system. So we've already installed it to the hard disk, so we have to go to devices, we have to go to optical drives, and we have to make sure that this is unchecked. So we want to make sure that once we've done the installation with to the hard drive, to the hard disk, that we no longer want it to boot from the ISO image. It'll just keep us going in a circle. It'll just keep rebooting back into the live CD, and we won't be able to figure that out. So make sure that once you've done the installation and you come back up, that you uncheck this. And then you can force the unmount. Go ahead and just force the unmount, and now you're done. And now you will boot from the hard disk and not the ISO image. So now that I have created a default user, I'm going to go ahead and restart one time. I'm going to come back up, and this time I'm going to log on as root. So now it's going to allow me to log on as Cyber Offense, but I'm going to go ahead and change this by clicking here. And now I can change this on over to the root, and I can hit enter. And now it's going to ask me for my root password that I set up earlier during the installation process. Go ahead and type that in. Now it's going to log me on as root, and I'm going to create another profile. So I like to log on as root because then I don't get prompted for the changing of the prompt or my user access over to the root while I'm logged on as somebody else. It's just much easier to deal with having to install software or make changes to the operating system if you're logged on as root. Now again, I'm just going to step through this profile here. Just turn everything off. And again, now it's going to go ahead and create a user profile for me as root. Go ahead and close out the help tutorial. And now I can go in here and I can click on the activities. I can just type in terminal here. And I can bring this up, and now you'll notice that I see that I am logged on as root. If I was logged on as Cyber Offense, it would say Cyber Offense at localhost. Okay. So now we've got to remember a couple of things here. First off, if I'm not active for more than 5 minutes, I'm going to get kicked out. I'm going to have to log back in every 5 minutes. So I want to make sure I go ahead and disable that little problem. So I'm going to go over here, click on the Start button, go over here to the System Utilities, and this is going to bring up the All Settings, and underneath All Settings I'm going to click on the Power icon, and underneath Power I'm just going to pull this window down and select Never, and now I will be logged out after 5 minutes of inactivity. Now the other thing we have to remember is that this is an actual operating system. It's no different than a physical machine. If I go up here and I just turn out to power off the machine, it's no different than me walking behind a physical machine, grabbing the power cord and just pulling it out of the power supply. We don't want to do that. That corrupts the operating system just as if it was a physical machine. So make sure we don't do that. And to shut down this machine, we need to do it gracefully. So I'm going to click on the power button, and to shut down this machine, I just go to power like so, and I select either power off or restart. Now I'm going to go ahead and power off, and that will conclude this short video presentation on how we go about creating a virtual install of Fedora Workstation using VirtualBox. Now if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact your instructor, and I will see you in my next video presentation.